Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Plato Wyngard and the Valley of the Immortals, chapters 31 to 33, by Mark and James Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 31. The viper stirred slowly at first, then shied away with a start at the shadow of a figure leaning over him. Still tied up with ropes, he struggled to move and then winced at the pain flowing through him, in particular his ribs. The combination of blurred vision and the position of the person standing at his front made it hard to make out who the individual was, until an icy cold voice spoke. "You know, when last we spoke, I was so angry that I swore to kill you when we met again. But now, seeing you like this, it's all I can do to stop laughing at your incompetence," the wraith teased. "How long have you been standing there?" The viper fumed. "Long enough to wish I owned a camera," the wraith replied. "Well, now that you've had your fun, would you mind untying me?" the viper asked. The wraith signaled for one of her men to cut the colonel from his bonds. "I don't know why you're so angry. I've heard from a good source that you quite like this sort of role-playing." The man cutting the viper free from his restraints snickered at this comment, and as soon as his hands were free, the viper pulled a small push dagger from his belt and drove it deep into the eye of the wraith's man. Death was instantaneous. The viper's handwork was so swift and precise. The viper, still lying on the ground, did not wait for the dead man to slump onto him. Instead, he pushed him roughly away with seething contempt and used his knife to finish cutting himself loose from the ropes. "That was a rather rash and childish course of action," the wraith said, as she stared dispassionately at the body of her dead soldier. "I'll not be the butt of anyone's jokes, least of all one of your lackeys," the viper said. "Whatever. You owe me another man now," the wraith said. "I take it the general is aware of my problems in acquiring the statue?" the viper asked, although he already knew the answer to his question. "But of course, you don't think I would hesitate in the slightest in relaying your failure to Tun, do you?" the wraith said with obvious relish. "Neither of us has had any luck since the advent of the foreign dogs. I suggest we cease this pointless sniping until we are in possession of all 4 statues," the viper said. "Agreed," the wraith replied. They boarded the Huey, unaware that as the large green chopper lifted up into the sky and disappeared into the sunset, they were being watched by 3 individuals who managed to be camouflaged despite wearing suits. Chapter 32. At the same time the wraith's chopper was taking off, Plato's plane was touching down in the Nam Jin province, roughly 120 kilometers southeast of the People's Market. They had flown in near silence, in particular Huyn, who had sat with his head in his hands. The only talk had been Plato informing the rest of the team that they were touching down. The massacre at the market had taken a toll both mentally and spiritually, with all members struggling to deal with the deaths of so many innocents. The C-123 touched down in the dark, and everyone disembarked, except for Huyn and Luther, who was reviewing instrument data from the cockpit. With a sigh and a groan, Luther grabbed his pistols and started to exit the plane when he noticed Huyn tucked away in the shadows. "Huyn, is that you?" Luther asked. He was greeted by silence. Luther took a couple of paces towards the pirate. "Leave me alone," Huyn muttered. Luther turned away, took a couple of steps, stopped, and sighed, an internal struggle between what was right and a hot meal and sleep waging within. "Do you want to talk?" "Not particularly," Huyn replied. Luther took a deep breath, then a seat opposite Huyn. "Listen up. I understand where you're coming from, Luther said. I sincerely doubt it. 6 years ago, I was involved in patrols in My Lai, in the Quang Nam province. I'm sure you've heard of it, Luther said. Huyen stared at the large black ex-soldier but said nothing. Yeah, that's what I thought. Hundreds dead, rape, murder, torture. I was not immediately present, nor did I have anything to do with it. Am I disgusted and ashamed? Yes. Did all of my buddies have something to do with it? Number. But that doesn't stop me and a lot of my buddies feeling shattered inside. What happened there will affect me for the rest of my life. Nothing will change that. But there is a part of me now that knows that it wasn't my fault. So I should ease up. And you know what? Sometimes I do. It will always be an ongoing battle to justify and forgive. Some days are better than others, Luther said. Why are you telling me this? Huyen asked. Look, I don't really know you, but from our brief but turbulent time together, I can tell you're a decent person, rough around the edges, but good. What happened today was not your fault. Did you let revenge get the better of you? Yes. But what right has anyone got to judge you? No one knows the depth of your pain but you. Hell, I probably would have done the same thing under the circumstances. What I'm trying to say is that the only person responsible for the deaths of those villagers is the Viper. He gave the order and he pulled the trigger, and when the Grim Reaper eventually swings his scythe, the Lord will pass his judgment. I'm not telling you to not feel, but what we're now involved in has the capacity for more senseless death, and we need your help to prevent it. Okay? Luther said, getting to his feet. I'll try, Huyen said, his voice cracking with emotion. Luther left Huyen to figure out his own course of action. As Luther was departing the plane, Plato was leaning against the ramp, waiting for him. Why have you never told me that? Plato asked. 1. Because I was ashamed. And 2, he needed it, Luther said. You're such a marshmallow, Plato said, and put an arm around his friend. Huyen saw my softer side. You're about to experience my harder side. Luther growled, but was wearing a lopsided grin. They walked off towards the small hangar in the distance. Bian was engaged in deep discussion with Nat when Luther and Plato entered the hangar. She frowned at the absence of Huyen. Is he all right? Bian asked. Only time will tell. Just give him space for now, Luther said, as he strode over to their table, on which lay their maps and steaming dishes of noodles. I hope you made enough for an army because I'm famished, Luther declared. I hope tofu has enough protein for your biceps, Nat chuckled. Luther glared at Nat, then Plato. I swear you two are begging for a beatdown, Luther muttered. Nat placed a hand up in surrender, then produced another bowl. Relax, big guy, red meat coming through, Nat said, and handed the large bowl to Luther, who proceeded to devour the contents in loud slurps. I take it you already know where we need to be next, Plato asked. The village of Van Kat, Bian said. I'm tired and in need of sleep. What's in Van Kat? Plato asked. From what we've been able to decipher, there is a temple where a cult resides, Bian said. Cult, Luther repeated. Yes, cult. They call themselves Jiao Mao, and they worship the celestial realm that is inhabited by Liu Han, our last immortal, Nat added. And you think that's where we'll find the fourth statue? Plato inquired. Nothing certain, but if I were a gambler, I'd put money on this, Bian said. Now for the big questions. Are these cult members going to be receptive to our, I don't know, digging around? Plato asked. Doubtful. They're all women who for the past 10 years have been persecuted by a male-dominated communist regime. In a nutshell, they hate men, particularly rough military men, Bian said. Great. The final obstacle on our path to the Jade Cup is a bunch of hairy-legged feminists, Plato sighed. And it's exactly that sort of thinking that's made them so narrow-minded, Bian replied. I was only kidding, Plato said. What are you suggesting? Nat asked. I was thinking subtly, Bian said. Subtly is my middle name, Luther stated through mouthfuls of food. Bian turned to Plato and gave him a "Do you see what I mean? Look." Plato snickered but nodded in agreement. What exactly does the monk's map say? That can be of help, Plato asked. Not much, just one word. Strength, Bian replied. You're right, that's really not much to go on, Huyn agreed. Remember everyone, these women are not our enemies, so let's not go in, guns a-blazing, Bian stressed. We'll try and do the best we can, not to hurt anyone, Plato said a little condescendingly. Chapter 33. The Temple of Jiao Mao was a veritable fortress. Built centuries earlier of stone and granite, it had been designed to repel invading forces. 1 hour earlier, Plato and his team had scaled the external wall, dressed in black combat clothing, like ninjas. His intent, in and out with no one the wiser, his earlier words and attitude to Bian now coming back to haunt him. Due to their strict self-reliance, the Order of Jiao Mao were located away from civilization, which was now proving useful. But to whom was the real question, as Plato and his team were under attack from all sides. The moment they had entered the grounds, the first assault had taken place. Despite the fact that they were well-trained and ready, that did little to prepare them for the cold-blooded efficiency of the warrior sisters. Unable to take the offensive, they fled through a rabbit warren of passageways within the temple. Plato was amazed at the sheer size of the structure and grounds. Rounding a corner, they entered a large open courtyard, complete, with cobblestones, gardens, and a beautiful, ornate fountain in the center. Perceiving no immediate threat, Plato gave the signal to face and wait, hoping this would give his team a few precious seconds with which to get their breath back. Bian, who had remained at Plato's side throughout, moved closer. We'll try and do the best we can, not to hurt anyone, Bian hissed in Plato's ear. Have I lied? I'm pretty sure we haven't even caused the single chipping of a nail, Plato replied. My meaning was, I thought we weren't going to be engaging them at all, Bian said. It was mine too. Who would have thought they would be so proactive in the defense of their home? Plato muttered with an air of admiration. That's all good, but what are your plans to get us the statue and get us out of here? Bian asked. Plato was silent, the tactical part of his brain kicking in, trying to come up with the necessary solution. Since we arrived in this turkey shoot, we haven't been just lucky. They could have nailed us many times over in the past hour, and they haven't, Plato said loud enough for all to hear. I'm hearing you, brother. These sisters are good, Luther concurred. So what are their motives? Huyn asked. Nothing too nefarious. Just capture us for torture, Plato surmised. Sex torture, I hope, Nat said. By sex you mean castration, Plato added. Everyone winced. But we're not going to let that happen. Plan? Luther asked. Nothing fancy. Keep moving, find the statue, then scat, Plato replied. Scat. Stop trying to act all fly, whitebread, Luther chuckled. Plato ignored him. We know we're moving in the right direction, according to the map. We keep doing what we've been doing and hope our luck holds, Plato said. Awesome plan, Nat muttered. Glad you approve, Plato replied with a grin. They continued down another series of corridors and stairs, going lower and lower into the bowels of the temple. They moved cautiously through hallways lit by oil burners until they arrived at two towering timber doors. Engraved upon them were the 4 immortals and a cup. "I think this might be the place," Knott said. Luther slung his machine gun over his shoulder and placed both hands on the doors. He pushed with no effect. "Damn, these doors are solid. They would be too much for many. But not me." Luther growled and grunted, the muscles on his huge arms bulging under the exertion. The doors creaked. Sensing their weakness, everyone got behind, and with a massive surge the doors broke, groaning as they swung open. With Plato to the fore, they entered into the dark, weapons raised, ready for anything, or so they thought. "Don't let your guard down." A flame sparked out high overhead, its brightness standing out in the sheer dark. The flame spread out in a long arc. It continued to burn until it illuminated the entire room. It was huge in both length and width. As for height, what Plato had assumed was the ceiling was revealed by the flame that now burned brightly, high above, in fact to be a ledge, from which dozens of warrior women peered down. When they saw Plato's team, they cheered. Plato whirled around towards their entry point only to see the huge doors close with thunderous finality. The cavernous room was empty except for a large tree in the center, a beautiful mature elm, its leaves glittering in the firelight. Plato noted dozens of colored ribbons tied decoratively to its branches. "Silence!" A strong female voice rang out through the room. The throng fell silent. Plato and the others kept their weapons trained on the figures above. The gesture was futile. They were outnumbered on the low ground, and there was no exit. "Place your weapons down," the voice commanded. Now they could also see who was behind it. She was dressed similarly to the others, basic olive-drab military-style clothing and a shaved head. But there was something different about her. A defiant stance, fierce eyes. Plato wasn't sure, but it appeared that she carried more than just a warrior's respect with these women. She was their absolute leader. Luther and the others held firm, waiting for Plato to issue an order. "I will not ask again," the voice commanded. Plato looked around, then nodded towards his team, dropping his assault rifle to the ground. They immediately followed suit. "Well, now that you have us, what now?" Plato called out. At the far end of the room, another set of doors. More warrior women raced through, heavily armed, their intent unclear. "Me and my big mouth," Plato muttered. With no other option, they allowed themselves to be restrained by the sisters of Jiao Mao. Plato hoped that their captor would be a calm, reasonable person once circumstances were known. They were forced onto their knees, hands tied roughly behind their backs, then made to wait. The woman who had been earlier addressing them from on high now strode towards them. Plato noted the efficient, no-nonsense manner in which she carried herself, flanked by 2 others whom Plato guessed were her lieutenants. The women now stood before them. She was even more imposing than before, her piercing green eyes studying them intently. She finally turned her gaze on Plato. "My name is Quian. I am in charge here." "I take it you're the leader of this rabble?" Quian asked. "Yes, I am." "Lu, I'm not interested in your life story," Quian interrupted. "Whether you're aware of it or not, you have entered the inner sanctum of the Princess Lu Han." "Yes, we're aware of our presence here, Again, Plato was silenced, this time by the butt of a rifle to the back of the head. The blow was intended merely to stun him, not knock him out, but it had the desired result. Plato felt its hard sting, but decided not to give them the satisfaction of showing his pain. Good. Then you would know that entry into this area means your death. Only those that serve the princess are granted permission to be within these walls, Quian stated. We have a perf. Plato started to speak when he sensed that he was about to receive another blow from behind. Realizing that their death sentence changed everything, he decided to act. Shifting his weight at the last second, he avoided the coming blow. With the warrior now off balance, Plato swept his leg back and hooked hard. The warrior was violently knocked from her feet, landing with an explosion of exhaled air onto her back. Before anyone could respond, Plato rolled to the side and applied a leg lock around the downed warrior's neck. The result was instantaneous, as she was unable to move, and Plato's lock now had full control of her airways. The other warriors, shocked at first by Plato's quick reflexes, started to move in on him. Wait! Anyone so much as moves and I'll snap her neck, Plato growled. Everyone froze. This can only end one way, Quian advised. Well, by your own admission, we have nothing to lose, Plato replied, and flexed his legs. The warrior at his mercy immediately started to gasp for air. Kill her, and you'll all die a slow and painful death, Quian said, but the fearful look in her eyes betrayed her. All I'm asking for is to state our case, Plato said. There was a long silence. I'm listening, Quian instructed. I'm not denying that we came here to rob you, but we do so for completely selfless reasons, Plato said. Doubtful, but please continue, Quian replied. We have come for the statue of the final immortal. We plan on retrieving the Jade Cup, Plato said. There was a collective gasp from all the sisters, including Quian. Sacrilege, Quian yelled. Plato again tightened his hold on the warrior's neck, letting them know that he still had the floor. 4 days ago, my partner Luther and I were completely clueless about the concept of the Immortals and the chalice, but circumstances have thrown us all in this together, Plato said, indicating the rest of his team. We became aware of a plot involving General Tun. For the next 20 minutes, Plato told them everything that had happened since the fateful day they happened on the Viper. To her credit, Quian listened intently and appeared to believe the story Plato had to tell. When he finished, he paused and waited anxiously for her response. I'm afraid this changes nothing, Quian said reluctantly. You can't be serious? I can show you items that we currently have in our possession that will prove. I believe you. However, we follow century-old rules that I cannot override. There is one thing that I can do for you. Only it might not be the answer you would hope for, Quian said. Quian ordered their restraints be removed, but her warriors kept their weapons aimed in an aggressive stance. Plato also relinquished his captive, realizing the futility of his predicament, and also as an act of good faith. The only way I can order a stay of execution is by granting you what you sought to acquire, Quian said. That's good news, isn't it? Luther replied. Our order is almost as old as our departed princess. Every generation takes an oath, pledging to keep Princess Liu Han safe and her principles close to our hearts. It hasn't always been an easy task over the centuries, as women trying to maintain the integrity of our temple, as well as keeping ourselves pure in body, mind, and spirit. Especially recently, both the war against the US and communism have attempted to usurp our efforts. But as we prevail, and that is because of our unwavering commitment to our code and rules, Quian said. I'm afraid I'm not following you, Plato responded. We do indeed have the fourth immortal in our possession, But the only way you can receive it is by undertaking the tests of strength in order to prove your worthiness, Qian said. You're kidding, right? Bian objected. There was silence in the room. I'm afraid not. You either commit to the test, or I will have no choice but order your immediate executions, Qian said. Surely there must be another way. Not interjected. These are your only two options, but I must warn you that to undertake the challenge may very well result in all of your deaths anyway, Qian said. Well, if those are our only options, and the collection of the statue is our main priority, then I have your answer. We agree to your proposal. We will take the tests of strength, Plato announced. So be it, Qian replied solemnly. Qian led them over to the large grevillea, and they stood beneath its outstretched branches. By your own admission and free will, you have agreed to partake in this most ancient and sacred rite. I swear on my very life to uphold the tradition of our order, and promise that the contest will be judged and ruled upon with honesty and integrity, Qian announced in a formal tone. Plato nodded their acceptance of her words. What happens now? Huyn asked. There are 3 parts that must be completed. Failure of anyone will mean failure for all, and the order of execution will be carried out. Only 3 of you may participate and only 1 person per task. You will only be informed of the task immediately prior to its commencement. Each task has a set of rules that must be adhered to, and any form of cheating will be our death. Yeah, I think we got it, Not replied. Yes, so now you see your dilemma. The tests are impossibly hard. Only the princess herself can see you through them, Qian said. In that case, Luther, myself, and... I'm afraid that you can't choose who competes, Qian said. I thought you said that this would be done fairly, Plato protested. And it will be. The decision will come down to fate. I take it that you can all see the ribbons tied to the ends of the branches, Qian said. They all looked up and nodded. You are all required to pick a ribbon. 3 of the ribbons contain the image of our deity. Those who find this image will participate in the contest. Good luck, Qian said. No one moved. Plato, taking the initiative, looked around and plucked the first ribbon he saw, then held it firmly in his grip. The others quickly followed suit, the process taking no time at all. Qian had them all lined up, and one at a time they unfurled the ribbons to reveal the identity of the 3 participants. Nhat was the first. He flicked the ribbon open. Nothing. He breathed a sigh of relief, then immediately felt bad for his reaction. Plato next. The ribbon opened, revealing an image in fine gold silk stitching of the princess. Although he didn't show it, Plato was glad he was one of the participants. Luther appeared calm as the second image was revealed. He also looked pleased. Huyn stood stony-faced as he presented his ribbon only to find it blank. He was shocked at this revelation, and he turned to Bian, a look of horror on his face. No, this can't be right, Huyn objected. I'm afraid that the tree of faith never lies, Qian replied. It's okay, Bian said, and placed a hand on Huyn's arm. She then fumbled with her ribbon, her hands shaking slightly. She opened the ribbon to reveal the 3rd image of the princess. It is done, Qian announced. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Plato Wyngard and the Valley of the Immortals has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.